Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're an old subscriber, welcome back. And if you're watching this and you have not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. So we're still on the Funding Your Postgraduate Degree series. We're in part 3 now, which is the final part. And that is how I've attracted R1 million. It's actually just over R1 million in postgraduate degree funding since the start of my postgraduate career. So this was starting from my honors year into my master's year and now in my PhD year. So I actually did like some maths and some accumulative, adding and things like that. And I came up to just over R1 million that I have attracted in funding for postgraduate degree studies. That is including my stipend, so my yearly what I get per annum, as well as what I've attracted for travel to fund my traveling that I've done since the start of my postgraduate degree career. So if you're interested in watching this video, keep watching. So as I've mentioned, we're at the end of my Funding Your Postgraduate Degree series, and today's part 3 is going to be me telling you how I've attracted over R1 million in funding for my postgraduate degree studies, as well as for my travel that I've done during my postgraduate degree. So I actually did the math quickly now before I started this video, because I didn't want to say, oh, I've attracted over R1 million in funding, but I haven't exactly done so. So this is the figure that I came up with. So as you can see, I don't even know how you say this figure, but it's just over R1 million. So that's what I have attracted in funds from my honors year, master's year, and now in my PhD year. So I'm going to break it down, and also in this video I'm going to be giving you tips on how to make your postgraduate application more attractive, things that I've learned over the past 4 years, and how you can apply them when you apply for postgraduate degree funding, and how to make your application more attractive. So let's start at the beginning. So the first kind of money that I attracted in my postgraduate career was in my honors year, and this was from my supervisor. So if you remember, in my first video I said that you can get funding, my first video of this series, so part 1, how you can get funding is through your supervisor, or if you actually apply for funding. And you would rather actually apply for funding yourself, because you end up with more funding than if you are funded through your supervisor. So for example, in your master's year, I think if you get funded by your supervisor, you get 50,000 Rand per annum. But if you have your own funding, which is funded by a government institution like NRF, you get 90,000 Rand per annum. So you can see that it's almost doubled. So you want to look for your own funding, and that's really, really an important incentive. So starting for me, for my honors year, I was fresh out of my undergraduate degree. I didn't know much about applying for postgraduate funding and things like that. So my supervisor was actually kind enough, they don't have to do this also, to apply through her grant for me to get some funding as an honors student of hers. So since I was doing my honors year, like I said, your honors year is not free. I had tuition, and from my supervisor I got 20,000 Rand in my honors year, which I paid towards my tuition fees. So I think I was left with only a little bit after that. So she really helped me, pay my tuition in my honors year, and took that burden off my parents. In my honors year, I didn't receive a stipend or anything like that. The money that I received just went towards my tuition. So don't be like me. And if you're an undergraduate degree student right now and you're watching this and you want to pursue your honors, please go ahead and look for funding which funds honors students. I know that they are available. It's just a little bit tricky sometimes, because our honors year in South Africa is considered like a 4th year, which is why the tuition is not free, and you really only become a postgraduate student when you're doing your master's, PhD, and so on. But if you are going to pursue your honors year and you want to pursue your honors degree, and you're an undergraduate student, especially if you're in your final year, please look for funding. I know there is funding available for honors students. It's just that I was not knowledgeable at the time and I did not apply for any, but I definitely know for a fact fact that there is funding which funds honors students, and you really want to secure that, because like I said, you end up getting more than if you're funded through your supervisor. Also, don't be afraid to talk to your supervisor about funding, because you know, they will help you, also might help you, you know, lead you in the right direction, guide you into finding postgraduate, you know, degrees fundings. I know my supervisor, any opportunities that have to do with postgraduate degree funding, as much as we have funding and we're well funded, he still forwards it, because he's like, if it works, apply. You know, even if you have funding and there's no other conflict of interest in you holding multiple fundings, except universities I know do have a cap for each year. So I think in your master's year there's a certain cap that you can't go above, and in your PhD year there's also that cap. I have not reached those caps in either of my years, so it's really important for you to actually secure as much funding as possible. There's so much funding out there. As I mentioned in my previous video, in part 2 and part 1, I think that I've really been emphasizing that there is so much funding out there, and you should not be pursuing a postgraduate degree without funding, especially if you're a young Black woman. So please look for funding. I promise you it's going to be for your benefit at the end of the day. So going back to how I've attracted this R1,000,000, so it was 20,000 in my honors year from my supervisor, and then I started applying for my master's in my honors year. As I mentioned before, when you apply for postgraduate degree funding, apply the year prior you're going to pursue that degree. So I was lucky enough, you know, to have a mentor and people in the department who assisted me with the project concept sheet, which is what I mentioned in my previous video, that I used to apply for my master's. Although I did not do that project and I did not pursue that project because I moved to HPP, which is the HIV pathogenesis program. I also moved schools and I moved into doing a master of medical science, but I just notified my funding instrument that, you know, I've moved, and what I actually applied with was a TB project, and now I've moved to HIV, which is still a high priority research topic. So there was no issues with that with me moving. Right, so that was 20,000 Rand. Then you guys can also calculate along if you want, to make sure that I actually make up the amount that I said I've attracted. So 20,000 Rand in honors. Then I went to my master's. I secured funding with the NRF for 2 years. So I got the master's skill grant, I think that's what it was called, and that's 90,000 Rand per annum. So that's what I got in the 2 years that I was pursuing my master's. And then in the second year of my master's, so actually in the first year of my master's, I applied for funding from the PRF, which is the Polymyelitis Research Foundation. And this organization really funds research on virology, which is what I was doing. As I was majoring in virology and doing HIV research. So in my first year of my master's, for my second year, I applied for PRF funding, and that was 40,000 Rand. So this was to supplement the 90,000 Rand per annum that I was already getting. Because it's a much smaller grant, and it's not, like I said in my previous video, you cannot hold 2 government funded grants at the same time. This is because they're really large. And everybody kind of needs to have a chance. So this was a smaller grant that I got in my second year. So in my second year, I got the 90,000 from NRF as well as 40,000 from PRF, the Polymyelitis Research Foundation. And then, so in this million that I've accumulated this far, I'm also counting funding that I've attracted to fund my travels. So if you've watched my travel video, in there I talk about how it's so great to travel in your postgraduate degree because it's free, you know, and things like that. But you actually, which is probably what I did not emphasize that much, is that you have to secure your own funding. If you do not get funding from the conference, for example, that you've applied for, they normally come with opportunities for you to apply for scholarships to attend the conference. There are other means and other channels that you can use to apply for funding. So in my case, we can apply for funding through our college. And we can also apply for something called Connect Africa, and this is open for students at ARI, which is the Africa Research Health Institute, HPP, the HIV pathogenesis program, and we can all apply to Connect Africa if we need help with funding there. So I applied for funding for my travel to Canada, which I got Connect Africa, which was $2,000, and that amounts to 37,000 Rand. And I also got funding from the College of health science, and that's our school, of 40,000 rand towards my travel. And then also in my master's year, I received 25,000 rand for graduating cum laude. So yeah, you also get money for that. I think if it's summa cum laude, you get even more. And then, so moving on to my PhD, like I said, I attracted funding from NRF as well, which is 120,000 rand per annum, and that's for 3 years. And then I also got PRF, which I mentioned I got in my master's, which is 55,000 rand for 3 years as well. And then for traveling, I got a travel grant from NRF. So if you hold NRF, you can also apply for traveling. I got 42,000 rand from them for my research visit, as well as for Sante, because I'm also a Sante fellow, which is the Sub-Saharan Network for TB and HIV Excellence. And I got 100,000 rand from there. So that's how I got to that figure that is just over R1 million. And I just wanted to give you a few tips to how to make your application more attractive, and that is, make sure that your concept sheet is succinct, make sure that you are applying with something that is priority research, because that's really going to push you to the front. Make sure that, you know, everything that you've done, you've followed the instructions to the absolute T, and if there's anything that you've done extra to go above and beyond, make sure that it enhances your application and it doesn't take away from it, because like I said, these people go through thousands of applications, and if you're going to write stories and stories and stories before you get to the point, it's not going to make your application more attractive. So make sure that your application is succinct, that you've got great recommendations, and that, you know, if you have community work, you know, make sure that you started doing community work in your postgraduate degree. All of that makes your application really attractive, and make sure that you take your time with the application. You know, all of those things will really make sure that your application is shining and beautiful and stellar, and you will definitely get funded. So that brings me to the end of my video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've really enjoyed doing this funding your postgraduate degree series, although it wasn't in a great amount of detail, because I tried to make it more attractive to people across the board. I hope that you've taken something away from it, and I can't wait to share more important topics that will make sure that it makes your postgraduate degree journey better, easier, fun, everything. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video.